YouTube, it's Brian Phillips again. Got the radio set up. We've had these flaps installed here over the, I would say, since about the 11th. And today is the 14th, I believe. So what we're doing now is we're just doing a final test to make sure that everything continues operating as expected. And that's important when you do a big custom flap install, because some of this stuff, as the glue dries, it'll get sticky, but it won't totally cure. So flaps, checking that these have drooped, which they have. Landing flaps, they've extended upward and they've gone down further, which is good. Obviously the loading on the servos is not great, but we're just going to do a quick visual here on that. No movement at all on the servo. That's what we want to see. Or rather not want to see, whatever, which way you want to say that. Okay. Help it along. Make sure there's nothing bound up. Keeping in mind that a static model will sometimes exaggerate the buzzing of a servo. When you bring these things up in the air, the aerodynamic effects on the servos are always going to be loading each servo. So the way that the servos work is that they're always, the potentiometers, okay, so if imagine the potentiometer is 360 degrees, it's always trying to find home, and it's not actually 360 degrees on most of these. You're only using, what, like maybe 180 degrees of it, if that, and a little bit less on most servos. So imagine whatever position that this rod is supposed to be in, this control linkage is, it's always trying to fight it back. So like this, load, load, okay? Now watch this, this is a normal surface. Load, load, okay? So it's normal to have load. That's why when you're running a receiver, people say, well, if you're running 5 servos, you need to have so much power, so much voltage, so much current, okay? In this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. But we also have 4 BECs that are linear BECs that are all working together to power the electronics on the system. Now, of course, there's only just a wing right now. But one concern is because the stabilizer is working, it's going to act on the ailerons. But it's also going to act on the spoilers, which aren't installed yet, but they will be. That's what we're getting ready to start. So you got to keep that in mind as you make decisions. Now, I have them all the way up right now, too, just so I can see when they're on and off easily. But just a quick moment of reality check here. If you have a model of this complexity, which, I mean, there's a lot more complex models out there, obviously, but this one's fairly complicated now. You want to occasionally verify that you're not going to overload your control circuit level. You know, your control circuit voltage and power supply is limited, just like it is for your motors, for your ESCs. So that's part of the reason why I actually, on the 31st of March, so it'd been like well over 2 weeks ago, I ordered, as part of my Hobby King order, I ordered a BEC, an S-Spec, that will hopefully be running off of our main power feed. And we have this set up so we can actually use 2 separate batteries. But I pretty much always use it as one, okay? That's why I have this wired together. We'll be pulling power here, and then we'll be able to energize this whole receiver bank or individual sets of servos and lights. You'll notice we don't have lights on this plane yet. So that's the next big thing on the docket. But, you know, these planes have a way of being destroyed before they get to the last step when they're this complicated. At any rate, today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting our spoilers, okay? Now our spoilers, and I'm really pleased with the way that the flaps have performed, given they've been sitting for a few days. That's very important. I really wanted to fly this thing on Thursday, but I got a new company truck, and Anyway, well, about 10 o'clock I was done, so moving things over. So that's the way things go. But for today, we are ready to dig into the spoilers, and I just wanted to show you that last test. The spoilers of which are going to be here, of course. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 panels. And then, of course, the ailerons will act as a spoileron, and in our case, a little bit of a flapperon as well. But only upon landing flap deflection. And I haven't even decided exactly how I'm going to manage this, because when I set this to deploy to the upright condition, which I'll show you on my radio, which is this is my landing setting, has nothing to do with, well, yes it does. Okay, so from neutral they'll both go up, right? Just spoilers, no flaps. From takeoff flaps they'll go up, but they're only going to counter from this position. It's an offset what we're adding. Okay, from landing flaps they go up even more. Okay, so the reason I show you that is because it's going to make a difference on the way that this whole thing performs. Okay, so when I do this, that means I'm on the ground and I want to slow it down, or I want it to look awesome, one or the other. But it's not tied into my regular flap mode, okay? Which is B. This is the B switch, this is the A switch. So the reason I bring that to your attention is just so you understand how I'm deploying these different systems, okay? Because it does make a difference. If you tied it, now honestly I would love to take this switch out, which is a 3-position switch, and I would really like to make it about a 5-position switch, so I can have different deployments, you know, like low takeoff, high takeoff, you know, landing, you know, brakes, and then like have a reverse thrust or something like that. But for the moment, this is what we have. I have sliders. I don't like to use them because it's hard to remember where they are positionally. There's a detent in the middle, and it beeps when you get to the middle of that sweep. But again, all we have is 3-position and 2-position switches on this, and that's one of the only drawbacks on this system that I can see. And it's a DX18, so I have 4 more channels than I've ever actually used. The most I've ever used is 10. Anyway, so back to the story today at hand. This is going to be our spoilers overview, and we're going to get started on the project now. So throttle cuts on. Alright, when you do this hobby, occasionally you go to the hobby store and you have to buy like $100 worth of crap that's not very fun. Like fuel tube. This stuff's cheap, but it adds up. It's little things that add up. Like, oh yeah, that's not too bad. Well, it was $4.80 for 15 little dinky parts that aren't ever going to do anything that, you know, great. I did find very small hinges. These would have come in handy on this project. Of course, I didn't have them at the time. And you notice they're even more expensive than these DeBro ones, the Robart ones. I bought some higher quality Robart, the middle size that I was out of. And then I bought some more of these hinges. And some more of these hinges. I always buy the biggest size I can get. This has 15 in a pack. I was paying $5.24. Hobby Haven is really good in Des Moines. Hobby Town is much closer to where I live. And, you know, I know the owner, and he's a nice guy. The problem is he doesn't really have a huge interest in aircraft, from what I can gather. And so sometimes it's a challenge to get some of this type of thing, you know. Like, this was just one little small thing I bought. Oh, and then I bought some more CA and some more kicker and different things. And interestingly enough, when you go into a hobby store that's doing a good job, that sort of thing, which is a big bottle of kicker, will cost about the same as what you can go get it online if they're a smart shop owner. And they're pretty good at Hobby Haven about trying to understand the market, and they do a good job. So thumbs up, guys. Alright, now, oh, the other thing is I was short on 1mm wire, so I got some of that, and I got some more of that. So that is going to probably be used. This is 0.039 inches, also known as 1mm. Stock number 497, KS Precision Models, music wire. KS Precision Metals. I said models, I meant metals. Sorry, guys. So that's the stuff we used to actually make our control rods to run the flaps. So just as a heads up, that's kind of where we sit now. So my plan is to basically make these spoilers so that they cover this entire gap. I want them to look scale. They may or may not operate perfectly scale. You notice it in real life. Here's a picture from the back. There's 2 panels. And of course the aileron in the outboard portion, and the flaps are drooped down for full landing. You can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 panels. So we have, this is the air spoilers, and then these are the ground spoilers. You'll notice that a lot of times the ground spoilers are going to be the most inboard spoilers. I think that's just because there's a lot of lift that's being produced at that portion of the wing, because it's, by and large, it's the biggest part of the wing, okay? So what we may have to do is just to try to save a little bit of face, you know, I mean, because we don't have an exact scale flap, but we have as close as we could get, given the circumstances. We may have to enlarge these spoilers a little bit. The other thing is, if you look at this picture here, you can see these spoilers are almost unseen, but keeping in mind that these are deployed more. So you got your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then of course your aileron, which I think on the real one it might actually be 3 pieces. Yeah, it's 3 pieces on the real one, but on ours it's just 1 big piece. So we want this deployment to have gaps so that it looks like a real spoiler, and we want this one to have gaps, but we need them to all function as 1 piece because it's too complicated to have that many different controls. So if you look here, the way I did that on this Airbus is, of course, I just took a piece of plastic that was appropriately thick, and then like on the Airbus A380, this part is actually part of the aileron. It works with the aileron, and so does this. If I recall, oh no, sorry, on the 320 that's fixed. That's right, I'm sorry guys. These are the ground spoilers, and so I didn't have those active at all. They did nothing on this, and this did nothing except for get pushed up by the aileron. If that's the way that we deflect it on real life on the A380, I'd probably do it that way because that worked pretty good. I don't think we're going to get that lucky. I think we're going to have to embed a servo. So where are we going to embed the servo, and then how powerful is the servo going to need to be? These are all questions that I need to answer. Okay, so part of the reason why you guys get to sit in on these planning sessions where I talk to myself a lot is because, you know, you can sit there and send me as many questions as you want, but I'd rather teach you to fish than catch your fish for life, you know what I mean? So just, I'm not a rocket scientist, I just figure this stuff out by doing it. And then I watch a bunch of videos of other people doing it too. So in this case, we've got a certain thickness of wing to work with. My plan is to embed the servo probably body in so that the arm articulates up at full deployment and then down, but it will also be hooked to these, so it's going to go down like this and just hopefully not hit anything. So that's my whole plan. Now that means we've got this complex angle here and this angle here. We can cut that to 2 different angles, and we could just try to make it hinge right off the action of the aileron, so that in the condition like this, where I go spoilers up, which it's only up a little bit, and then it goes up a little bit more. So for the sake of our testing, to avoid having all these things cooking, because when those motors are doing that, they get warm, by the way, because the motor's sitting there trying to run to position the output. Okay. Which I still don't understand why that stupid thing is whining, because I trimmed this. But let's just say it's not a big deal, but it actually kind of is a little bit annoying. I'm not sure why it just doesn't shut up and work. I could cut the whole surface off and rehinge it. But you can see when I pull it, it eventually hits here. I wonder if I could just bend that. Let's try, guys. And I'm sorry, I know sometimes these overview videos, I get a little bit out in the weeds, but that's part of the beauty of YouTube, is if you really hate it enough, you can just stop watching. But don't do that! You'll miss so much good stuff. Let's put this the other way. This wing is really not even that big. I don't know how people do it when they build these like 15-foot wide airplanes. Okay, ask me in 5 years. Alright, so I'm going to take and bend this rod and see if I can improve the annoying buzz and chatter there. I'm not talking about me talking either, I'm talking about the ailerons, so. Okay, here we go. So grabbing this, squeezing tight, give it a little tweak. Okay, not much. Okay. Still buzzes a lot. It's hard to say if it's going to make an improvement. If it doesn't make an improvement, it's not the end of the world. Okay, you see what I'm doing, guys? I'm just making a little upward bend. And the objective is to transfer the energy out there to where it can do its job better. Then it doesn't buzz so much. I'm not sure if it's improving anything though. I think it made a small improvement, but it's not a all-inclusive thing. I don't think I got it all the way. Let's try doing the same thing here. Okay? Okay, so we got a little bend in there. Just double check and see. Yeah, we're pretty close. Alright guys, here we go. Could just be a really crappy servo too. Looks like I do have a little bit more bend there. You do want the symmetry to be the same. The position of the aileron is not what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the amount of bend in this. I'm just trying to get them exactly even, or as close to it. Okay, good enough for me. Alright, cool. Well, you guys might not have seen this angle. And you guys get to see the angle of the airfoil. Oh, by the way, if I didn't already make this blatantly clear, I did actually take the time to try to put a second servo in there, and I just found that it wasn't effective. There was always an angular difference. The deployment was never square, so you never could get them to work together. You'd have to basically dedicate another channel, and if that was the case, I could just use the entire travel of the servo to avoid some of the buzzing and problems we've run into. Now, one other thing before we keep going on the spoilers is that I wanted to try to improve the strength of the wing, and I had actually a recommendation that sparked my interest the other day, and the recommendation was something like this. My hot glue is hot. The recommendation was, why don't you just reinforce the wood or take out the wood and put in carbon fiber? And I thought, well, that seems kind of stupid because, you know, you're just going to lose all the strength of the wood. But it did kind of spark my interest in that maybe he's onto something. Maybe I could just take it out somehow and replace it. Well, I thought it'd be better to just maybe add more thickness there, you know. And so I think that's what I might try to do. Of course, I put it the wrong way. See this area up here? I'm going to do this, guys. And literally in like 5 minutes, I'm probably going to end up undoing it, okay? So this is probably an exercise in futility, but you guys can all have a good chuckle in 5 minutes when I'm literally pulling this hot glue off. Now, why would that be an exercise in futility? Because I'm probably going to add servo adapters. But I might also be adding them out here. It depends on if I actually end up needing servos or not. I really don't want servos for my spoilers, okay? let's just be clear on that, crystal clear. I do not want to add another spoiler. Just one more electrical motor running. It's just one more thing that can go wrong. So let's not do that. Alright, so here's the deal, guys. At some point I'm going to have to actually start cutting something out, right? So as you can see, we've got these little markings on here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I counted wrong. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8. This would be 3, but it's actually 1. No big deal there. Okay, so if I want to cover this up, let's just start doing rough cuts. Guys, this is the way I do it. There's other ways you can do this. I've actually printed out spoilers. And then, not from a 3D printer, I mean just like a regular printer on the computer. And then I just lay them out until I get them right. But in this case, this is going to be kind of the completely rough cut. You know, where we try to get them about the way we want them to fill up the space. Okay. And then whatever I do on one side, I'll basically do to the other side. It's all I'm going to do. Try to keep it simple. Some of these steps, you know, a guy could sit here and spend half a day figuring this stuff out. And not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just not my style. Once I've gotten started on something, I want to kind of get moving on it, you know. But you do have to have enough material here to cover the whole thing, and you want to get approximately the right shape. Okay, so let's say that's approximately right shape. I'm not saying it's right yet, but it's closer than it was 2 minutes ago. Now we just start using some creativity, and we just kind of get the shape a little bit closer. And you know, I'd even thought about, when we're all done, rather than painting it, I may end up making a white vinyl sticker that could be applied to it, which would show our gaps, which would help with like the panel lines. And then I would apply that and actually have the vinyl be my transition onto the wing. I'm not sure how I would do that though yet, because this is one of the non-scale things on this plane, is the shape that they made the silver. Now, as you know, I covered up. This said, I think, airliner, and then this said like A380, or it might be vice versa. I can't remember which way it was. But one way or another, you guys can go back in the video if you really care. But the idea is, I want it to look scale when it's done. So this is kind of what I'm doing as my guess and check. Okay? So I'm just going to sit here and just refer to a reference drawing. And I do have my radio system on, and I do have the flaps powered, just to make sure everything stays in the same position. So we got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so the two inboard ones, they're the ones that don't deploy quite as much. So when we get to that point, we'll want to make sure that we have access to making them not necessarily a different size, but we want to see if there's a way to easily make them deploy less. To be perfectly honest, what's going to happen is if I run a linkage here and I deploy it, this side is just going to resist movement a little more than this. That might be good enough to get the job done. We don't need this to aerodynamically fly this plane. We need it for awesomeness. So there is a pretty big difference there among scale aficionados. I'm sure you guys are into scale airplanes, or you wouldn't be watching this. You might watch the planes fly if you're just an everyday regular Joe, but you're not going to watch this build series if you're not into airliners or radio controlled airplanes. Okay, so we need to trim this a little bit more. Should be ticking over to 27,000 subscribers today, so thanks for being part of that group, guys. I have to imagine if you're watching this build series, you're probably one of those subscribers, so thank you for helping make something of this channel. And I'm not talking about the one-time people that come and watch one video once and give you a thumbs up. I appreciate that too, but the people that keep coming back are really, they're really what helped this channel to survive. And then you people that go and actually buy stuff from the affiliate links and stuff like that, I just really appreciate you guys doing that. Helps to fund my habit. Helps to keep good footage coming. And we have something big possibly coming, but you'll just have to wait on that because we don't even know if it's going to happen yet. But it could be awesome, and I'm really excited about it. It could give us a really cool footage. And I'm not talking about one video, I'm talking about like until the end of time. Kind of cool. So, anyway, you'll have to wait and see on that. That's the total non-official announcement of the day. You're probably sitting there thinking, is this really the way you do this, Brian? And the answer is, yes, this is really the way I do it. Until you get it about the right shape, you're just guessing checking. Now, on the real airplane, the spoilers stop before the end of the flap, but on my fake airplane, the one that has the word airliner printed on the side of it instead of Airbus, the spoilers are here. Now, might have been that I cut the flaps in the wrong spot, might have been that they put the canoe in the wrong spot. It doesn't really matter. It's not going to make a big difference. It's not of any consequence. However, I want to hide it, and this is the easiest way to hide it, and it's not going to adversely impact the flight performance or the scale look of these spoilers. So I think we're going to just go ahead and terminate them here. Now, as you can see, we're going into that silver a little bit. So I want to kind of sit and think about that for a minute, how I would handle that. It can be handled a couple of different ways, in my opinion. Not the least of which is to basically paint this whole wing white and then just leave it, or decal this whole strip, over decal it, you know, which would incidentally give us some strength too, unless I want to embed a carbon fiber strip up here and then cover that up. Kind of sparks my interest doing that, because the idea is the problem with this wing is not the fact that it bends. I like that, it's cool. But the thing is, it bends just a little bit too much, and just mostly on the outboard section. The inboard section's perfect, but the real ones have this pre-stress to them, so when they're sitting on the ground, the wing comes up in goals, like a seagull. That's what I mean by that, okay? And even with the spoilers totally retracted, this guy's making a turn here. You can see his nose gears turn, so he's not at speed or anything. Because at speed with those things down, you're going to push the wing down. But with, you know, a few 100,000 pounds of fuel out here on the wings, it's going to make them droop. But they're also pre-stressed so that when they're in flight, they get pretty much a straight across appearance. And this is what I want. This is what I'm looking for. Straight. Right there. That's what I want to duplicate. So this goal is gone, but that's because this is pre-stressed down. They do that on these big wings. They don't do it on all the different airliners, but the Airbus A380 is kind of a nuance because it's so stinking huge. Alright, cool. We're not far off. I just want to try to make this more symmetrical. And that's where this method kind of starts to fall apart a little bit, because it's very challenging to make it exactly symmetrical when you're just going from like a freehand drawing. I'm going to show you my halfway solution to getting this symmetrical, okay? So I'm just going to measure the point at the end, and I'll just go through and plot periodically, with the understanding that my leading edge will be my good mark, and then my trailing edge will be where I can modify. See what I'm doing? I'm just poking a little hole because it's sharp on the end of these calipers. See, hole, hole, hole. Okay. And the whole purpose of this is to try to get this so that it's nice and even. Okay. So now we would take this and come over here and just visually inspect real quick And it looks like we might need to just pull it back a little bit, which would be good. I would love it if that seam started right there, okay? Because then we could impact less of the wing, still keep the scale appearance to it. But then when we deploy those, they'll be of greater impact. And you don't want them up here. You want them back here. Okay, so let's start cutting. Remember, some of you guys were kind of giving me kudos when I started cutting the flaps, and I was doing the same thing for myself, because that's the scariest part, is when you start cutting into the plane. Well, with these spoilers, it's not near as scary because you don't really have to cut into the plane much. You're just going at it from a standpoint of you're kind of adding to the plane, so it's a whole lot less scary. And you see I didn't take much off. Okay, so now just getting the alignment approximately right. Now, one thing that sucks about where we're lining up is that I can't just tape to this silver. It'll peel right off immediately the first time I try to articulate these things. So, I think at this point I've got to go ahead and it looks like we're probably about out of time on our, do you like how I built that up on top of my ESCs? It's like a super fire hazard. I did that just for extra excitement for you folks at home. Alright, this part's going to come to an end, and we're going to start the next part. This is going to be a 2-part series, 2 or 3 parts, but I'm going to give you guys 2 parts to the first video. Alright folks, this is the second half of the first part of the spoilers on the Airbus A380. So if you've been watching along, we've just been, obviously you're still watching along because this is the same video. We're going to go ahead and get this trimming up to snuff. Remember, we just grabbed whatever piece of construction paper was sitting in the kids' room on the floor. I think it's a schoolroom. Either way, whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is, we're just getting this thing trimmed. It doesn't look like much now, but it's going to be awesome when it's done, okay? I'm sort of kicking myself for not putting that tape on the inside portion. Alright, so now we can go ahead and pull off a little bit more of this tape, and we're going to start doing a pseudo hinge. Now, obviously, this purple is not going to be our it's not going to be our final product. It's just simply something for us to use as a template. So we can see how the shape is going to work. And then we'll probably cut this out of plastic. And I'll show you exactly how to do that part. That's a fairly easy part too. Just want a little teeny bit of coverage there. Because this stuff will be seen a little bit more than the underbelly of the airplane there. Okay, so remember to kind of pull this tight. Ooh, see? That would have touched the silver. So I'm going to take and trim that back just a hair. Okay, see that? Pulling it kind of tight-ish. And the purple's no accident because it's easy to see. Just happens to be the first one I picked. I didn't go after purple for any particular reason. And this is when you can fix problems that you aren't going to be able to fix later. Okay, so obviously this isn't going to deploy in one piece. It's going to be 2 different pieces, but the cut's not going to be there. It's going to be somewhere like here. If you look at the picture here, it looks like the bend is right there, and of course I happen to be making the one that's mirror of it, so it's a little confusing. So this is where the cut would be made. So we can go ahead and cut that right there, okay? Now there's nobody saying you can't adjust this later, of course. And if they say, you can just say, screw yourself, buddy. I'm not doing that. Alright, here we go. Okay, so, oh yes, that's cool. Okay, so it looks like that seam is actually straight here. So maybe on this one I need to go ahead and just straighten that up. We already know the dimensions approximately, but I think the better bet would be to go ahead and just tape this sucker down and just get one good straight edge on it. Because that's where the hinge is going to be, guys. So it's going to cause all sorts of grief if there's a bend in it. Kind of like the flaps, guys. I don't know if you remember that from the flaps. I do. I remember it vividly. Still having nightmares about it. Just kidding. No nightmares. They call them tremors. I don't even know if that's a thing. So what am I going to use for a straight edge? What do I have that's long and straight right here? This will work. So, problem with this is it's going to probably take away our overall size, but we are a very smart fellow, so we are going to fix it. And I'll show you how. And it's super easy, okay? Sharp X-Acto knife. Watch this, guys. Oh, yeah. Okay, so we have our cut. Just got to do a little extra cut there in that tape. Okay, I guess we're going to do another cut because I didn't cut far enough through to get that cut good. Goodness gracious. Who taught you to use an X-Acto knife? Me. You see what I did there, guys? It was a total screw up. It's alright. No big deal. We'll just grab this and rip it out of there. Now, where are we going to put this wonderful piece of scrap that should be thrown away immediately? Well, you guessed it. Right here. We're gonna reuse it so that it's nice and square. Because remember, all we're doing is we're going for the size. We just want to make sure that we have the correct outline. And this is going to help us to accomplish that. So we'll just go ahead and plop it right there. Okay? Simple, easy does it. Easy peasy. So now, rip it off. Rip it off. Cut it off. Alright, cool. So now this can go back up here. Oh yes, gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Just ignore the ugliness of the horrible cuts. But that should give you an idea of the shape. So now I can take this back to another clean sheet of paper to remove all these distractions and trim it out. So we're going to do that next, but I'll pause it while I get that done and come right back to you. Alright guys, so I said I was going to try to remove distractions, so I found a big book, a paper book, and like a pamphlet from one of the scales that we sold that's just garbage. And I squared it up, cut it out, and now we're ready to go ahead and plop it down where it belongs so we can see if the size is exactly correct. Remember, this is a very critical step because you can really get your placement where you want it. Okay, so you'll notice I'm going to avoid putting this tape onto the silver, because even though this clear coat will come up, you won't see that, but you'll see if the silver comes up. For sure. It'd be nice if we could get this in a square line straight, and then do a square, nice, neat line there too. And what that'll do for us is, you see I went onto the silver there just a hint. What that's going to do for us is it's going to allow us the opportunity to make a new straight line on the gray. But we'll just paint these spoilers white. I think they're white. I mean, they're whatever color of gray the wing is. You can see here we got white and white. And that's the white body of the plane. So I think white's going to be sufficient. I think it'll match close enough. Okay, so we've got our main bank of 6. And now we just need to do the inboard in the same way. And you see we kind of went a little bit bigger with this just because we wanted to make sure we get good coverage. So I'll just use this. And I'll show you guys exactly how I did it, because this one's a lot easier. So this is the book I was talking about. So I'll just rip that up. And just so we don't have problems with that. Might actually be able to fall right inside of here. That's pretty awesome. That worked out good. So now, to trace it, I'll just go on the outside edge, on the outside edge, except to trace it I'll go up here and I'll use a different color so I can see it. Of course I picked a spot where I'm going to be obstructed by black markings, so we'll go here. Okay, green corner, green corner, green corner, green corner. Okay, I don't even care about the between. Okay, just like that. Put your markers away. Let me take our wonderful straight edge again. We'll use this straight edge because it's not as long. Match up our 2 lines. Let's use the black marker this time because we can see where we're cutting. We'll just go, and then we'll just kind of find our little seam here at the top. You gotta make the noise, all nerdy like. And I'm gonna keep most of the black mark. Now you can see how this is working, guys, and keep just a little bit of the green. Nice square clean cuts with scissors. It's easy to restore the squareness now. Whereas with my little crappy cutout before, it was all slobby. See? Nice square, neat angles. And let's double check our fit, and we'll actually hang on to this. I'll show you what we'll do with that in a minute here. So we aren't quite as deep, not quite as deep as our inboard ones. You see that? Another 2 or 3 millimeters, something like that, would be sufficient. So let's do the same operation again. Grab a different color this time. Over the blue, over it with blue, over it with blue, and then we'll just kind of do that as our bottom mark. You see our sharp edge and our sharp edge. That tells us where to extend it. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, man, why don't you just measure? Well, because nothing is ever square. It just never seems to work out the way you want it to. This time I'll use the knife to cut it. Just on that one cut. We'll do the same thing we did before, just keep that little outside, we'll just keep that little outside edge. Just keep a little bit of the blue, then we can always trim it back now. But just keeping nice square clean cuts, you see. That's the kicker. Now why do we care about the clean square cuts? Because then when I go and, maybe I photocopy this and then I mirror the image on the computer, to actually duplicate it for the other side, you'll get an exact representation. Remember, this will be seen. My cut on the flaps will not be seen. It'll be hidden most of the time. Except for right there. You know what? Too bad, so sad, I guess. Okay, it looks like we're just a little bit bigger now, so we can just take a little more of that blue off. We'll probably have the difference on there. So there's literally a sliver of blue left. We should be about exactly where we want to be. Okay, so we made up there perfectly, or very, very close to perfectly. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to color this in solid. And the explanation for that will come later, but while I'm picking up my garbage, I'll tell you why. And that is so when we scan it in the computer, we can go ahead and get a good outline. It'll be easy easy peasy. But we do need to have an arrow somewhere. So I'll just, I'll just use a different color to do the arrow. Okay. For the forward, front of the plane sort of arrow. Give you a reference. Because obviously this is on the right wing. But if we're going to be making these and then making them mirrored, we're still going to want the arrow. So this is the right wing, and this is the right inboard. Right? Now this one's going to be a little bit harder to see because it's you know, black marking on black. But this is the right outboard pointed forward. Right? So now this particular marker bleeds through, so that's why I haven't laid it down yet. I want to keep the marks from getting transferred onto the pure white body color there. So while we talk about this for a minute, we can put this stuff away. And so basically our next step is to get it taped down and just really inspect it and just be 100% sure of what we're doing in terms of size. And then we're going to go ahead and do probably take it upstairs and we'll put it on the scanner and scan it, and then we'll print out both sides. Now we should be able to, we might have to reference this, so we just leave that one here. This one here we can lay out of the way for a few minutes. Ah, I don't like spiders. Look at that little son of a gun. Alright, cool. Alright guys, so now that we've taken care of our wildlife issue, got these taped down. I left just a little bit of a gap here. You can see we've got the, dimensionally, everything seems to be correct there. So now looking at this wing, of course it's mirrored, I'm sorry guys. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 panels here. And it looks like a big one, smaller, 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 smaller. Smaller. And then 2 of these. This is cut, see how it's cut at an angle? It's cut at an angle like this. Yeah. So basically, what I would have to do now is just kind of make some segments here. So I'll try using this marker that's kind of sucky, so I hope it marks. So we would just take and split the difference and just come up with our midway point. Of course, this marker is not going to cooperate. We'll just do this. So like on this wing, if it was here, it'd be out that way. So over here, it's going to be like this. So we'll just split the difference here. Just do kind of a rough drawing. Now again, going out this way, we'd have, how many lines do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines to draw. And it looks like the second line would come out to here, to where the flat panel is. Yeah, so that'd be one segment. And the second one, it's at a steeper angle for some reason, so we'll see what that does for us. Kind of makes for a weird looking last one. Oh, it's because the shape of the wing. That's why they do that. Okay, so there's 2, there's 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3 lines. So it'd be 1, 2, 3 lines here. So you could take about a third, 2, and 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? So now, I think they number them like 1 through 8. So 1, 2, 1, 2. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Forward, 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 and forward, and forward. Even though we have an arrow here, we'll do our forward here. So now there's no excuses. We'll know which one's which. Now, I know you guys probably can't see that as good as I can here, since I'm marking black on black. But it's okay. Because what I can do now is, if I wanted to, I can actually cut these individually out, and I can print them out putting them back together. But I don't know if I even need to do that yet. I'll figure that out here in a few minutes. Depends on how hard it is to cut it out of plastic. Once we cut it out of plastic, then we can start making those decisions. Okay, so now I'm going to do a simulated hinge here. We can go ahead and do our first deployment of our pseudo spoilers. I am going to have to just suck it up and put a little tape here. Now remember, this one's going on to the silver, so I'm going to try to remove as much tack as I can, but still, of course, have enough to hold it in place. Okay, at the end of the day, it's probably going to end up being a piece of tape that holds this on, so not a big deal. Okay, so we're just going to fold that up and just behold how awesome it looks. So far it looks kind of weird because of the blue. The other thing is, it looks kind of weird because it's all one big panel. So we'll just only cut just short, and we'll cut just a little bit more, and then we'll just keep trimming until we have a sufficient gap so we can see it. Okay, so we have 2 panels. Cool. And then this little piece that had been holding it down can go away. Same thing here. But I'm going to go ahead and take some of the tack off with the oil on my fingers. Do the same thing on the other side, a little bit on this bean bag. And then we're going to secure it. I hate to do that because I know it's probably going to still try to pull that paint off. It's not going to pull any taints off. Don't worry, guys. So now, keeping in mind, if this does rip off the silver, you can touch it up in a number of different ways, not the least of which would be to make a custom decal. Probably be, oh, you see what's happened here, guys? It pulled up the clear coat, thus allowing the silver to be exposed. Okay, so I'm going to just trim that real quick with a sharp X-Acto knife until I see it release. Okay. So now we can go ahead and re-secure this, pulling most or all of the tack off of it. We just need it to hold it in position. We don't need it to really hold it. It's not like we're going to fly like this. But believe me, if you don't try this, it's not going to line up the way you want it to. I'm going to give you the 100% guarantee on that. Okay, so now it's down. Deployment we have. We'll probably regrettably have to do a third point. And I guess I've just made up in my mind that if it does complicate my silver, then I'll either touch it up with a silver paint pen, or I'll make a silver and white little decal thing that will go here. Touching it to the beanbag, squaring it up, and here we go. Okay, so here's our deployment. Looking for things that might cause us problems later, like the fact that it's lifting there. Now that's going to be completely corrected by this cut here. So let's do that. We don't even have to cut all the way down to the bottom. We'll just go cut 1, cut 2, cut 1, cut 2. Of course, I'm moving over just a fraction of a millimeter. Cut 2, cut 1, cut 2, intentionally leaving them all attached. Now this one I got to reevaluate real quick before we cut it. It looks like it's a split the difference pretty close. I think my cut might need to be in a little bit from where I made my mark. Cut 1 and cut 2. Here we go. Okay. Here we go. Just ripping out these little danglers in the middle. Alright, cool. So now up you go. And of course the ideal deployment would be something in this order. Okay. And of course with firm plastic, these feathers are going to be able to still have a little bit of movement in the air, but my hope is that they'll largely do what we want them to. Well, how do you manage getting these to move when you've got this weird angle? I'm trying to think of a plane I have that has a complex flap shape that I'm articulating with a wire. I know this guy has kind of a complex shape. Basically, the music wire, even if we use a servo, this is going to move both, okay? So the servo, being centrally located, would move this up and down, tied in with the condition of this, okay? So it slides up and pushes it up, and then slides down, it slides up, pushes it up, and so on and so forth. But only a minimal deployment would ever happen unless you had just a maximum aileron roll, which is going to help to roll the plane too. And this one, regrettably, would also deploy, okay? In real life, these only come up on the ground, okay? So I think what I would just do is I'd probably just take my wire, and then my wire would just come over here unfixed. So it'd be unattached, possibly. So then as this articulates up, this angled piece of metal would also bend up. Because if we bend it out, then we have to make this little 30-degree bend and then a 90, and what will happen is as you do this, it'll try to rip it off the wing there. So I think we've got a good shape. Now let's compare it to the frontal view. That black makes it film bad, guys. Sorry about that. That looks pretty cool. See the shape? The shape of this one, how it's trapezoidal. Trapezoid. See how this one's trapezoid? That's what we're going for, guys. We're just going for mimicking reality closely. And let's plug in the battery and see what the full deployment looks like. Okay, up. Man, that really films bad, doesn't it? I think we look good. I think it's going to look good. I think we haven't totally screwed up here. But we're not done yet. To be honest with you, I'm a little bit nervous. They're kind of big. And, I mean, they're kind of big on the real planes, but on the real planes, you know, you're kind of like 1,000,000 pounds or more. Or maybe a few million pounds, I don't know, a couple million pounds fully loaded maybe. So you wouldn't be landing that way, you'd be landing with less fuel, of course. But let's just say it's 1,000,000 pounds, right? For easy figuring. You need to slow that plane down, you need to spoil the lift so that your brakes will work on the wheels, of course. We don't have any brakes on this plane. I think it's satisfactory. It's time to move on to the next step, which is going to be plastic, okay? Now the good thing about these templates that we've made out of paper is that they're easy to work with. Now we just need to dig in our garbage. And when I say garbage, I mean, yep, that's pretty much what it is. Oh yes, I like you very much, plastic. I like it because it's big. I like it because it's sturdy, but it's also a little bit heavy. I think I can tolerate it for how good and strong it is. And it looks to be that I've got enough to do both. Now it's hard to see, I bet, in the video. But yeah, that's nice. This glue is a pain to get off, but I can get it off if it's just on a small area. Now this stuff works good. This is off of sort of like an RC car or something for the kids. I've also got this big piece, which is thinner. That might be better for this application. That probably comes off of some kid's toy as well. That was probably for me. Now if I cut them out of these, those would work good, but I would have to cut a bunch of small panels, and I want to use the whole panel as strength. What do we have here? Ooh. That's thinner. A lot thinner. A lot lighter. But the only way to get one big piece would be to probably do a couple of different panels. Yeah, I don't like it. I'm just trying to go for simplicity here on this one. And then let's see what we got here. That's another kid's toy. Might be long enough. Well, anyway, but you guys get the idea. That's how we do it. in my world. So as you can see, I'll be cutting out of this. I'm not going to film it all worth of crap, I'm sure, because the nature of the clear on clear. So I'll see if I can get that a little better. Okay, so this stuff is going to get used on this and possibly other projects, but on this project, I'll be painting it so I can go ahead and sand it so that it's easier to see, and I'll just sand it now. Plus I can take off this material here. This is the glue that was used to bond the plastic to the box. Now I'd highly encourage you to not try to heat that up and get it off of there, because you probably won't have very good success doing that. You could use chemicals if you wanted, but basically I'm just marring the surface, but I'm neatly marring it. This is going to give us a little something for the paint to stick to. And if we play our cards right, we can possibly paint the bottom side to keep a really, really smooth top side. But I guess I'm not really holding my breath on that. So once we get this thing all finished up here, that stuff didn't want to come off very good, did it now? Let's see if I can peel it off. Yeah, feels like hot glue. I don't think it's probably going to come off real good. I'm going to take a brand new blade, utility knife blade. We'll slide that out and we'll see if we can do it this way. Oh, it's separating. Maybe I can peel it now. Nah, doesn't want to peel. Well, anyway, you guys get the idea. I'm going to fight to get this stuff off and then come right back. Alright guys, so I took that, took a utility knife blade and cut that off and cut this off, and then used a little bit of acetone to get the remaining amount off. And then I buffed it with acetone, and then I buffed it with this. So I've got a kind of almost like a satin finish now on there, which is going to be perfect for what I'm doing when I get ready to paint. But for now, my next step, it's a very scary step, is to peel this off and try not to remove any of the silver. So I'm just going to go super gentle. Remember, we're going to preferentially treat the bigger piece, we always will, when we're doing something like this, because that's a big piece of plastic and we want to be able to get our whole project done, so we want to make the biggest piece first. The small piece, we can use another type of plastic if we have to. But you'll want to make sure you get your two biggest pieces first. Plus then you have like materials for the... Okay, so you see how I did that? I pulled up and away. This one's close to the seam, so I want to try to kind of lift the edge first, away, and then pull it back this way. Ooh, it's trying to release the other way. Okay, there we go. And if you can't get under it, you can get a knife up under the edge. See, it's wanting to peel that. It's wanting to peel up. You can see the little pucker in the decal. Oh, yes. Awesome. Okay, cool. You can see the seam's really good now. Now remember, if I were to cut this like this, then the painted surface would be on the texture. That I can live with. And you notice this didn't come off as clean as this side, so we'll go ahead and take advantage of that kind of screw up there. I don't know if you want to call it a screw up necessarily. And then, like I was saying, try to keep the biggest piece. If you're comfortable with this straight cut here, then use that as one of your guides. But I think what I might do is put it in a office cutter to get a nice square cut. But for now, guys, we're out of time. Spoilers on the A380. More to come, guys. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to check the description below. Buy what you can buy. Help support the channel. And come back for some more action. Thanks for watching.